Histograms on a computer. So earlier I showed how to do a histogram by hand. So I have the same set of data over here, and I'm gonna make a histogram. So first we'll do it the old-fashioned way. So to do that, I need to know the range of values. Now to calculate the range, I need to know the min and the max. So I'm gonna have to ask the computer that. So whenever we type a formula, we start with equals. And I need to know what's the max, and I start typing, and the computer says, yeah, I can find a max. And then I highlight the numbers. A couple ways to do that. And then I want to subtract from that the min, and it says, yeah, I can find a min. And so we're going to highlight those numbers. All right, so it gives me a range of 667. And then, let's see, I got to figure out how many groups I want. So let's say number of groups. And before I went for 8 groups. And so then this could be a width estimate based on that. So equals, I want to take my range and divide by the number of groups I want. And by typing these numbers in separate and then doing the calculation, I can change my mind. Like maybe I say, well, what if I wanted 12? So it gives me a different width. So if I wanted 12 groups, it should be around a width of 50. If I wanted 8 groups, then I would have a width of about 80. So I'm going to do what I did before. I'm going to say, well, 100's a nicer number. So I'm just going to go for a group width of 100. So once I get those calculations out of the way, then I'm going to make a new table. And that table is going to have my group max, and it's going to have my counts for each of those. So when I did it before, I said the group went from 0 to 100, then 101 to 200. The computer, to help me count stuff, only wants to know what's the biggest number for each group. So the first group is up to 100, second group is up to 200, and so on. Since that pattern is a consistent space, I can highlight it, let go, and use the autofill, and I want to get just past the largest number, which the largest number I believe was 700 and something, 729. Now to make the counts happen here, what I do in Google Sheets, I'm in Google Sheets by the way, Excel works a little bit different. I can show another video of that later. I start up with what's called the frequency command, and frequency means how often does something happen. So I want to find how often are there numbers up to 100. And the frequency command wants two things. It wants my data. And if there's nothing else in the column, you can highlight the whole column, but that can be dangerous. Clicking at the top, then Control-Shift-Down arrow will look for the end of the list, comma, and then your classes. And my classes means the group maxes. Okay, so I don't want to tell it 101 to 200, I just want to say go up to 200. And it knows to start counting after 100 there. And then just hit enter, and bang, it counts. So it's saying there's 2 numbers under 100. There's 15 numbers in that list that are above 100 but up to 200, and so on. So these counts there are actually giving me the number from 0 to 200, from 0 to 100, 101 to 200, 201 to 300, and so on. So those are the counts. A couple ways to continue from here. One way is to just highlight these 2 columns. Excuse me. The extra number here is the computer was just checking. Is there anything beyond the largest number you gave it? So it does a double check there for you. And then I can just say, hey, make me a chart on that. And then it says, so this can be a little bit deceiving because it says 100, 200. So that means there's what, 15 homes that were exactly 200,000. And again, I would have to label my chart so that people understand it's up to 200,000, up to 300,000, up to 400,000, and so on. If you don't like the way those labels came out, then you have to make a new column over here. So I'm going to go, let's get rid of this sucker and insert a new column. You would have to make better group descriptions by going in here and typing 0 to 100, and then 101 to 200, and so on. Keep typing them over and over. My advice is don't start typing those until you like what you see here. So let's undo a little bit. So if you like the look of this, great. If you don't, then start over. What does it mean to start over? Well, to pick a different count. So instead, I could go up to 50 maybe, and then 100, and then 150, and so on. Fill that pattern down. It's going to look a little bit different. Need to go a little bit higher. And then I've got to redo this. So to delete those, go to the top, equals frequency, highlight the data, and then highlight the bins, the groups, the classes. They have different names, all mean the same thing. So that's going to give me a different looking histogram. There is no best histogram. It's kind of an aesthetic thing, is what does it tell you? So notice this looks quite a bit different. Oops, I missed my extra one. Fix that. Help. There we go. I better go, let's see, what would be the next group? 750. All right. So again, what was better, this histogram or the other one? It just depends. They're different. They tell me slightly different stories. So one person might like this one, the other might like the other. Now, this is important. You should label this to be better looking. So my titles could be better. Like the data came from Hermiston, and it was home prices in 2019 that I compiled. And the vertical axis is, better name for that would be number of homes, and the horizontal axis should be, how about house price range? Then I could write a couple sentences describing house, horse, house price ranges. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So we got to make sure it's labeled well. So again, that's one way to make a histogram in a spreadsheet. Another way, let's duplicate this, delete, is to forget about all these calculations here and let Google try to do it for you. To do that, you highlight all the data and say, make me a chart. And it made a line chart, which is totally worthless for this data. Just because you can make a chart doesn't mean you should. One of the options is, hey, make a histogram. So this time Google decided to group the data 50 to 150, 150 to 250. Interesting, that first one is not as wide as the others. 150 to 250 is 100 wide. That bin is only 50 wide. So this graph is slightly deceiving. The computer that made it did the best that it could. If you don't like the groupings that the spreadsheet shows for you, then you can go customize the histogram. And instead of automatically picking the bucket size, which is the width of our groups here, we could pick a different one. So let's see, if we went for 50, that's going to look a little bit different. So 50 to 100, 100 to 150, and so on. And you could kind of mess around. What happens if we made it 80 wide? And it'll, oops, what happened there? There we go. So it goes 50 to 130, 130 to 210, and every histogram is going to look a little bit different depending on where you start and where you end. You can force the starting point by editing the horizontal axis and giving a minimum value to start at. So we could force it to start at 0, and then that's going to redistribute the numbers a little bit differently. So to make a histogram, you need a starting point, and you need a width for your groups. Then you go and organize those groups and count how many of the numbers are in each of those groups. Histograms. One of the most powerful graphs out there. Have fun. See you later. Bye.